Yeah, I've noticed that now that you mentioned it.
All right.
For who?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Haltom City Council meeting of August the 26th, 2002. We welcome all of you who are here with us in the council chambers, as well as those of you who are watching on HCTV. The first item of business is our invocation and pledge of allegiance to the flag. If you would stand, and I have asked Eric Riddle, our police chaplain, to take care of both of those. Eric, if you would, not only the invocation but the pledge as well.
Father in heaven, we gather here this evening as Americans. We gather here to participate in democratic government, and we're grateful for that opportunity. We thank you for the blessings of our city, for the prosperity you have provided, and for the peace that we enjoy. We thank you for our great country, for the opportunities that we have to worship in freedom, to speak openly, and to elect our officials to govern us. We're grateful for those liberties. And as our nation is involved in a conflict and a war on terror, we pray for our men and women who are overseas protecting those valuable freedoms. We pray also for the men and women who guard our peace and our freedom here on our home soil, both military, our police officers, firefighters, and ambulance workers. We ask that you will keep them safe and make them effective in their jobs. Throughout this evening's deliberations and all that happens, we ask for the best for our community. And we ask all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Eric, if you will, please remain. And Donna, if you would, please join him. I think you will be receiving a proclamation tonight. And after I make this presentation, Chief Hammond, if you have a comment you'd like to make, and members of the council, if any of you have comments, be prepared for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the gentleman standing here tonight has been a very important part of our city for the last several years. He has been the police chaplain. I say has been because Eric Riddle and his wife, who is at his side, are getting ready to move not only out of our city but out of state on the other side of the country from where we are. And we'll let him tell you about that in just a moment. We are very proud of Eric and for the work he has done in our city. Being a police chaplain is a real opportunity to render service to the community. And Eric has done that, and he has done it well, and we're going to miss him. And I have a proclamation I want to present to you tonight, Eric. It's a certificate of appreciation. And I'm not going to read all of these whereases. I do want to point out the fact that you've given voluntarily of your time to Haltom City and to the police department for over 4 years. You've provided compassion, support, and encouragement to the police family and their loved ones in times of hardship and loss. You've pioneered a chaplain's orientation class for police personnel. That you was instrumental in establishing a chaplaincy program for the Haltom City Fire Department as well, and that you've been a valuable member of the Haltom City Police Department, and in the process have demonstrated great honesty, integrity, compassion, and generosity. Now therefore, I, Calvin White, Mayor of the City of Haltom City, and on behalf of the City Council and all of the citizens of Haltom City, deem it an honor and a pleasure to extend this certificate of appreciation to Eric Riddle and to you, Donna, as well, in recognition of his many contributions to our community, with our best wishes of many years of happiness and success in your future endeavors.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. you very much. Thank you. I appreciate your encouragement very much. It has been a privilege and an honor to serve Haltom City as a volunteer police chaplain for the past several years. It has been something that I have enjoyed and an opportunity for me to grow. My wife, Donna, I am so glad that she's able to be here with me tonight because she's been so supportive, so encouraging, has never complained when the pager's gone off at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, has never complained when I came dragging in at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and hadn't seen her all day. She's been very supportive through all of that and so much more. We are preparing to move to Bluefield, West Virginia. We've accepted an associate ministry position there, and it's very, very hard to leave Haltom City. However, we believe that God has opened new doors of opportunity for us in ministry, in church ministry, and in chaplain ministry as well. I'm looking forward to establishing a new chaplain ministry in a county that has no active chaplaincy at all. So all of the things that I have learned here at Haltom City, all of the experiences that I have enjoyed will be put to use in the new ministry. I want to say thank you to Mayor White, to the city manager, Richard Torres. I want to say to all of the council members, thank you very much. Collectively and individually, you've been very encouraging about my chaplain ministry, and I appreciate that so very much. I want to say thank you so very much to Chief Hammett. Chief Hammett has encouraged me from the very first day that he took the role as chief in this city. He has opened doors for the chaplain ministry, and I appreciate his support so very much. For your certificate of appreciation, for your encouragement, and for your prayers, I want to say thank you.
Quite frankly, I don't know what we're going to do without him. He has, he's made calls, he's delivered death messages, he has counseled employees through times of trouble. He's been there for everybody. Even our fire department before he started that chaplain's program. He's begun the Emergency Services Chaplains Organization within Northeast Tarrant County. I'm going to break up here because I like this guy. We are going to miss him. Thank you, Eric.
Eric, we're not through with you yet. Come on back up, please. Members of the council, we'll just start position number 1. Come this way if you have any comments. If you don't, we'll just pass.
Eric, I'd just like to echo what Billy said. We're certainly going to miss you, and I remember the very first time I saw you in the field. I was riding out with the police department one night, and you were riding in another vehicle, and I had no idea who you were at the time, and I asked one of the officers I was with, I said, well, who is that? And I don't believe there's anyone on the police force in Haltom City, anyone on the fire department in Haltom City now that has to ask that question. You're a very well-known person in Haltom City, and you're going to leave a very large hole to be filled there. And I'm sure that as the Lord has given you a calling to another city, I'm certain that He's going to provide us with someone to step in and take over and attempt to continue the good things that you've done here.
Thank you very much.
I too just would like to echo what the chief said. It's very difficult to find somebody to fill that role and to go on those calls at 4 a.m. And we are going to miss you. And I've grown to know you over the year and a half that I've been on council, and appreciated everything that you have done for us, and just good luck in what you do in the future.
Eric, I'd like to say thank you to you and your wife both. I know what a hardship it is on her to have to give you up during the night and let you come out, but I know both of you have the love for the Lord, and so I know y'all are for the same goal. And y'all aren't going to believe this, but me and Eric graduated together. That's what the council do for you, kind of age you. We graduated from the fire academy together, and I got to grow to know Eric even closer then, and they were talking about all the people he got to talk with, and I enjoyed my time talking with you, and you really made an impression on me, and I want to wish you your best in West Virginia, I know it's a terrible place to live up there, but I wish y'all the best.
I'd like to thank you, Eric, for the time and the dedication. I know it's tough on your family. I know that you'll do well in West Virginia, and they're very fortunate to get you. I didn't have the option to graduate with you like John did. I thought he was twice your age, but he must have been the professor in that time. But no, I wish you the best in all your endeavors.
Thank you very much. Thanks again, Eric. It's been a short time since I've been here and gotten to know you, and never really got to know you very well, but I hope you'll stay in touch with us and share your experiences up there, because like you're taking a lot of information away from here and having grown and developed, send some of that back and let us learn from your new experience. I will. Thank you.
Eric, I won't make any further comment. I said everything a while ago at the podium.
Eric, I would just like to thank you for everything you've done for our community. You are a tremendous asset, and I would also like to wish you success in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you, and we appreciate your dedication to duty and much of your time, and we wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Eric, there's not much to say. When you get to the end, everybody's done said everything. At the same time, I remember the first time I met you, I thought, man, that guy's full of energy. I've looked up many times at a council meeting and saw you sitting here. You have fulfilled a void, and anyone in your position fulfills a need. And we're sorry to lose you. I would imagine that the people at your church here in Haltom City are sad to see you leave also. Church I attend, we lost our pastor 3 or 4 months ago, and it's difficult, you know. So we all need to pray for your folks.
Please.
Wish you well.
Thank you very
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you.
Chief Hammond, I think you have a postscript.
I do.
I was going to plug the church that he's leaving, okay? Sunday, September the 8th, will be Eric's last Sunday. And there's going to be a service dedicated to police and fire, public safety. And I, on his behalf, like to invite everybody to attend that. I'll be there. I think the mayor may be there, and hope to have a great big crowd out there.
And that's
Eric, thanks.
that's the
Haltom
Haltom
City
City
Christian Church. Sorry.
Yeah.
We'll give them the address, too.
Yeah. Well, 4121 Haltom Road. We're at Haltom Road in Stanley Keller, and at 10:30, you will be able to recognize our building. It'll be the one with the fire trucks there. The fire chief, as long as they're available and not needed for service, the fire chief is going to send a couple of pieces of apparatus that morning. We're going to have some police vehicles there on display. The morning is going to be a time to remember the brave men and women who gave their lives on September 11th, and to honor our bold men and women of Haltom City who put their lives on the line every day. It's going to be a very patriotic service, and I do want to invite everyone to be there and attend that day. Again, thank you all so very much.
Thank you again, Eric, very much. Bob Hamilton, would you join me at the podium, please? Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know who this is, I want to introduce Bob Hamilton. He is the president and CEO of the Northeast Tarrant County Chamber of Commerce, serving not only Haltom City, but Richland Hills, North Richland Hills, and Watauga as well. Chambers of Commerce are in the business, of economic development and promotion of business and quality of life issues. And we're very fortunate to have the quality of chamber we have serving Haltom City in this area, and to have someone of Bob's caliber at the top in the area of leadership. Just a few weeks ago, the Northeast Tarrant County Chamber won a statewide award for its program on economic development, and that's what we're here tonight to present this certificate of achievement to Mr. Hamilton and to the entire Chamber of Commerce. All of us, all cities, whatever our entity, economic development is the heart and soul of the growth that takes place. And to have a Chamber of Commerce that has won an award recognized among all the chambers of commerce throughout the entire state in the area of its program for the promoting of economic development is quite an honor for the Chamber. And we are the recipients of the benefits of the kind of things they do. We have an economic development department here in our city, works closely with the chamber, and it's my privilege, Bob, to present this certificate of achievement, and I'm not going to read all the whereases tonight, but it simply says that you support member city economic development efforts in several ways, and that you serve the 4 cities, and that at the convention in Tyler you were awarded the best program by the state, by the Texas Chamber of Commerce executives, and it's our privilege to present this certificate tonight. I, Calvin White, Mayor of the City of Haltom City, on behalf of the council and all of our citizens, wish to congratulate the Northeast Chamber under your leadership on winning this impressive award that endorses the efforts being made so far by so many to further the quality of life in our area.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. On behalf of the over 700 members of the Chamber of Commerce, we are certainly grateful for the endorsement we get from the City of Haltom City, as well as our other 3 cities and our 2 great school districts that we serve. This is just a testament of what can happen when you work together and you're cohesive, and we enjoy our relationship with the City of Haltom City in all levels, but especially with our Economic Development Director, Kent Flynn, and his staff. Excuse me. So we accept this, and we will proudly display this in our chamber offices. Stop by sometime and you can see the award, and now you'll see this beautiful commemoration for it. Thank you again.
The third presentation tonight is not one I get to make. It's one that will be made by one of our boards and commissions. If you remember at the last council meeting, I announced that beginning with this council meeting, we would be showcasing each of our boards and commissions one at a time, and we would do that in alphabetical order. And it's our pleasure tonight to have Chairperson of the Animal Control Advisory Board, former Mayor Nancy Watkins, here to make a short presentation about the Animal Care and Adoption Facility and to highlight the committee's purpose. Welcome, Ms. Watkins.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, good evening. I am Chairman of the Animal Advisory Board, and we do appreciate the invitation to be able to make a presentation to you this evening. The Animal Advisory Board exists to monitor state and local laws that ultimately govern and affect the humane treatment of animals. We're charged with keeping our ordinances up to date, which are then passed along to our city attorney for legalities, and then must be approved and passed by the city council. We also set the fee schedules and rules and regulations for the general operation of the shelter. These must also be approved by the city council. Our board consists of an animal control officer, a municipal official, a licensed veterinarian, a representative from a rescue group, and a citizen. Our shelter supervisor is Aaron Carter, and I have to tell you, he's one of the most dedicated and caring individuals we could ever find. We have prepared a 3-minute tour of our animal care and adoption facility. Our main goals in the new shelter were to decrease the high percentage of animals being euthanized, as we had no room in the old shelter to keep them any longer than the 72 hours that the state requires. Our other goal was to expand our adoption rate. The new central location and the ability to house more animals for longer periods of time has played a major role in allowing us to meet these goals. We're grateful to each and every one of you that has come by, and I might add that the response has been overwhelming. But for all of you that have come by and found a new furry friend. So with your permission, we will start our video.
Looking at the new Nancy P. Watkins Animal Care and Adoption Center. Completed in the spring of 2002, this 4,500 square foot facility offers a marked improvement over the older facility in regards to both service to residents and care for the animals. Centrally located at 5312 Midway Road, the Animal Care and Adoption Center is open to the public Monday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. During these hours, a Haltom City Animal Control Officer is available to assist residents with the claiming of a lost pet or the adoption of a new one. A look inside the building shows a spacious reception area where staff and citizens can conduct their business in an efficient manner. Information about all the animals housed at the center is stored in a computer database for easy referencing by animal control officers. In fact, any citizen looking to find a lost pet or to adopt a new one can access a regional database on their home computer by visiting www.petfinder.com. Here you will find photos and descriptions of all types of animals. One of the main features of the center is the adoption room. Here, patrons can spend time alone with the pet they are considering for adoption. The privacy of the adoption room gives prospective pet owners the opportunity to test the compatibility they have with the chosen animal. We are now inside the animal holding area. These rooms have 36 kennels for dogs and 40 kennels for cats. A state-of-the-art irrigation system is used on a daily basis to clean and sanitize each kennel individually. This is crucial in preventing the spread of disease from one kennel to another. A separate room is set aside for those animals under quarantine. Animals that show signs of disease or were involved in a biting incident are held here 10 days for observation. All of the rooms used to hold animals are ventilated and temperature controlled. Kennels in the older facility were located in an open-air environment, subject to any and all weather conditions. The receiving area for animals is located on the south side of the building. It is here where animal control vehicles offload animals that have been picked up. As a precaution, both sally port doors are closed before an animal is removed from a vehicle. Being in an enclosed area helps minimize the anxiety an animal may have while being transferred from the vehicle to the holding area. Closing the doors also safeguards the public in the event an animal was to get loose. We think this new facility is something all Haltom City residents can be proud of. We all know the effects pets can have in enriching our daily lives. Along with alleviating public safety concerns, this facility will serve to ensure the proper care of lost pets and the opportunity for abandoned ones to find a new home. Citizens with further questions can call the Nancy P. Watkins Animal Care and Adoption Center at 817-759-2124. We invite you to come and see for yourself. Who knows? The pet you've been looking for may be right here.
That filming was done by our own David Soriano, and I want to thank him for that. Great job, David. I don't know if any of you recognized one of our success stories in that video, but we rescued a dog from an abusive owner, and the animal control officers named the dog Bob for Bag of Bones. And Bob had quite a long term of getting well, but he finally was pronounced okay. He went to court and testified against his owner. And a man from Fairfield, Texas, came and adopted Bob because Channel 11 did a lot of coverage on him. So that was a really good success story. One last bit of information. Paw Pals is our volunteer group, and we do need volunteers. So if you have an hour or so to spare, if you'll call the shelter and leave your name, we will be back in touch with you. And that number again is 817-759-2124. A newly formed local rescue group headed by Scott and Tanya Morrow they're in the audience tonight. Tanya couldn't make it, but Scott is here. And they have been very instrumental in making this new shelter a success. The name of their rescue group is ROAR, R-O-A-R, and that's Rescue One Animal Resources. And I'd like Scott to just stand up, please, and be recognized. We owe him a great deal of thanks. The board has asked me to extend an invitation to any of you at any time to come by and see the shelter. And who knows, your paw pal may be there just waiting for you. Thank you very much, Mayor, Council.
Thank you, Ms. Watkins. And if you would, Councilmember Henderson, your light is on. Did you have a...
Feel pushed.
At the stomach.
Councilmember Jennings, you have a comment?
Yes, I do have a comment. I'd like to thank everyone involved with the new animal control facility, and I certainly would like to give Scott a pat on the back. I have interacted with him on more than one occasion of late, and for someone who's volunteering their services He gives an exorbitant amount of his time down there at that facility. He has a love for animals that is probably unequaled by anybody in this room. God has a special place in heaven for people like that, and I'd just like to say thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Councilmember Jennings. Other members of the council, any comments, questions regarding the Animal Control Advisory Board? Councilmember Markham?
I would just say that's a wonderful presentation. The animal control people in our city, I think, go above and beyond the call of duty. They always have. And hopefully they always will. I remember, and I'll tell this quick story. Last December, on Christmas Day, I was sitting in my den or in my office, and my wife come in there, and about 10 o'clock, she's getting all the Christmas dinner, everything ready, you know, as we all were. She said, there is a squirrel in our bedroom. And I thought, no. I said, do what? She said, there is a squirrel in our bedroom. I thought, you know, we're going to have some action here real quick. And I thought, I'm not going to get anybody from animal control on Christmas Day. But I did. I did. And it wasn't because I was sitting in this seat here. It was because we had someone that was ready to help the public if they needed help. And I applaud them. They do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
That's kind of hard to follow that act. I'd like to thank Ms. Watkins and everybody involved in that board and the presentation put together. And who narrated? Is that David Harper? Is that someone else? They did a very good job. Was not a cat lover a few years ago. I wasn't a cat hater. I just didn't realize cats. But once I got around Miss Watkins and some of that group and sat in their office and these cats sat in my lap, I got to where I really love cats. So if you don't have a cat or a dog, and I'll have to argue what Councilmember Jennings says about this gentleman, it's got to be a dead heat between him and Philip Jennings, because I've never seen Philip Jennings pick up a dog that he didn't kiss. So I applaud these people that love these animals. I love them, but not near as much as what some of these other people do. And if it wasn't for their love, we wouldn't have what we have today.
Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you, Ms. Watkins, for the presentation. Very informative, and that's what we hope to achieve each month, each council meeting. The next presentation will be made by the Beautification Board. Do you have anything? Okay. With that, we'll move to the consent agenda, and that is item number 4 and 5, and we have added, if you're keeping score in the audience, we've added item number 8. A motion, these items will be taken care of by one motion. These items are considered to be self-explanatory, and approval of the consent agenda authorizes the city manager to implement each one of these items in accordance with staff or board recommendations. I'm in line for a motion on items 4, 5, and 8, the consent agenda. Councilmember Williams.
I make a motion we accept the consent agenda as read.
Councilmember Jennings.
For second.
Any discussion on the motion? If you would display your votes, and that passes unanimously. We move now to a public hearing, item number 6, and to introduce item number 6, Mr. James Pliska.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, citizens of Haltom City. This is item Z-010-02, consideration and/or action regarding a public hearing on the adoption of the rewrite of the city's comprehensive zoning ordinance 97-01515 and the accompanying ordinance number 2002-032-15, an ordinance adopting a comprehensive zoning ordinance for the city of Haltom City, Texas, establishing zoning districts, regulating and restricting the location and use of buildings, structures, and land for residential, commercial, industrial, and other purposes, the density of population, the erection, construction, reconstruction, alteration, repair, and use of buildings, structures, and land within such districts, including the height, number of stories, size, and appearance of buildings and other structures, regulating landscaping and the size of yards and other open spaces, providing parking requirements, providing for the regulation of non-conforming uses and for the amortization thereof, adopting an official zoning map, providing for issuance of certificates of occupancy and building permits, defining certain words and providing for the interpretation of the ordinance, providing for a board of adjustment and powers of the board, providing for amendments and changes, providing that this ordinance shall be cumulative of all ordinances, and repealing ordinance number 097-01515 as amended, providing a severability clause prescribing penalties for violations of the provisions of this ordinance, providing for publication in pamphlet form, providing for publication in the official newspaper, providing a savings clause, and providing an effective date. The purpose of this tonight was to request the adoption of the rewrite of the City of Haltom City's comprehensive zoning ordinance, and that request was made by council approximately a year ago. The Planning and Zoning Commission conducted several workshops during a 7-month period. The public hearings were held on August 28th, 2001, November 13th, 2001, December 18th, 2001, and February 6th, 2002. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our Planning and Zoning Chairman, Mr. Bill Worthington.
As James said, we spent over a year revising this ordinance with detailed workshops. We did have, the city did have a contractor to help us with a comprehensive land use plan, and from there we detailed studied the ordinance. Before I get into anything on the ordinance, I do want to comment on the council liaison person that we had through most of this, Phil Jennings. He gave us immense contribution as liaison from the city council's feelings on certain things, and by the same token, he related to you some of the problems that we were having. And this went on for over a year. So I do want to commend him for the good work that he did with us. Primary differences in this ordinance that you have before you and the one that we're currently involved in is the organization of it. Now, there are a couple of new districts, but the organization of it, we took all of these restrictions from different districts, the permitted uses, the conditional uses, and placed them in a matrix. We had a matrix in an ordinance back, I think it was 1014 or whatever the number was that back before the current one. But Phil Patterson preferred not to have a matrix. I never understood why, but that's the way we had it. To me, the matrix is going to make the administration of the zoning ordinance much easier, and I think that if you have looked at it, you will see that if somebody wants a zoning for a particular use, all you have to do is go find that use, and it tells what districts it's allowed in. If necessary, the administrator can go to the district write-ups for any special restrictions or allocations. 2 additional districts, the townhouse and the business park. The townhouse was recommended by the various members of the commission. Arlington, I know, has a townhouse district, and they seem to be very successful in that. Business park was initially recommended by the contractor. There are some areas of Haltom City that are undeveloped, that are in locations fairly close to freeways They're large locations and could very easily be developed into a business park. That is, with office buildings, a campus atmosphere, if you please. I don't believe that South Lake and Trophy Club and Westlake have to be the only ones with decent office parks. That's primarily what I wanted to tell you, or to give you. I will answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, I will open the public hearing at this time. Members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Worthington? Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to reciprocate with the words of encouragement. I appreciate the words you said about me. There's probably just one person that I can think of up here who can really understand what these people have gone through, and that'd be Councilmember Fowler, who served on this commission. I would like to individually thank each and every person that served on that Planning and Zoning Commission. John, turn your phone off. We're talking a year worth of hard work, a year worth of going to seminars and studying over packets of information 2 and 3 inches thick, and asking all of the right questions. Some of them at the right time, some of them at the wrong time, but the fact is they got answered and they got asked. And the reason that we are in the situation that we're in now in the city of Haltom City, that our zoning is in such good shape now, is because of the work of these people, and I certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Members of the council, any further questions or comments for Mr. Worthington? Councilmember Markham.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say appreciation to all the Planning and Zoning Board for their work, and Councilmember Jennings also. I know he put in a lot of time on it. And especially the chairman, Bill Worthington. His wife is not in the best of health, and we know that. And he spent a tremendous amount of time on this and away from her. And I appreciate that.
Councilmember Fowler.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to also thank Mr. Worthington, but I think we really need to thank the staff. Mr. Pliska did a fantastic job on this. It's been a long process. Just so that the citizens can see, this is the document that was gone through by the Planning and Zoning Commission. It did take a great deal of time and a great deal of effort by all the members and the staff and everyone involved. I know it was sometimes a tedious process, but with Mr. Pliska's help and the help of our hired people that we brought in to help give us examples in different areas, I think we've made it through, and it's going to be a very good document that will be beneficial to the city, and I think we're already seeing the benefits of it. So I want to thank all y'all and Mr. Worthington. If you'd pass it on, thank the members of the Zoning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Worthington. Someone may have a question for you later, so don't go too far away. Mr. Pliska?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to point out some highlights that we discussed in the pre-hearing, and I would also thank the cooperation of Wilbur Smith and Associates of Dallas, who were our consultants, not only in the rewrite of the zoning ordinance, but also, if you'll recall, the update of the comprehensive land use plan. There were some highlights that were discussed in the pre-council today. One item of which is item 31.8, or on page 31.8, and that is referring to parking of RVs in residential areas. In the old ordinance, in all residential districts, which would be the SF1 and SF2 in the city, major recreational vehicles shall not be parked in any street or public right-of-way for a period exceeding 3 hours, with the express purpose being for loading and unloading operations. It was discussed in the pre-hearing that this was a mistake over the years, that this should have been changed to 24 hours. We did have some discussion concerning the time length that it would take to unload or load or prepare an RV for travel, and council agreed to extend that to 24 hours in the pre-hearing. Also with some discussions, and you'll have a stakeholder, and I see them in the crowd tonight, on the height of portable buildings, portable storage buildings in residential areas. I handed out information concerning those items, or that item, from other cities for your information on this. During the process and during the moratorium, council and staff looked at this issue of portable storage buildings. We had some, the old ordinance allowed a 16-foot high by 320 square foot maximum portable storage building to be built on a residential lot. Because this was happening or occurring on the smaller lots in the city, during a moratorium was passed, and we investigated this and brought it back to P&Z and council, therefore reducing the height from 16 feet down to 12 feet and reducing the minimum square footage from 320 square feet down to 200 square feet. And this is what we are recommending in the ordinance tonight. During the public hearing process, we may want to hear from one of the stakeholders or a family that lives up north. These are highlights that were discussed in tonight's meeting. And then just to formally say that the Planning and Zoning brings this to you and voted unanimously to recommend approval of this zoning ordinance rewrite to the City Council for their adoption at their meeting on August 13th, 2002.
Members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Pliska before I open the floor to the audience, since this is a public hearing? I believe there is. Mr. Pliska, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the audience, this is a public hearing. If anyone here tonight wishes to speak for or against any provision of this proposed ordinance, you'll have an opportunity to do so at this time. I do have one appearance before the City Council card filled out by Mr. J.C. Harris, and we'll give him first opportunity to address his concerns about parking of major recreational vehicles in the street. Mr. Harris, are you here? If you would, give us your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is J.C. Harris. I live at 5713 Kelly Court. My concerns are on the 24 hours I can stick my trailer in my yard, which I have a nice yard, a nice home. When I moved here, I could set my trailer in the street, nobody bothered me. Starting about 2 months ago, we got to be selective enforcement. Every time I pulled up, I'd get nailed. Poor police officer, 11:30 at night, waking me up, say you got to move your trailer. I park it legally. I hook it up to the air conditioner to run and the refrigerator so my wife can load it the night before. I wash it. We usually pull it in about 7 o'clock on Thursday. By 3 o'clock on Friday, we're gone. And I just think 3 hours is not enough time for an old man like me to wash a 32-foot trailer that's 16 or 12 foot high and clean the floors for my wife and get it loaded in 3 hours. And I'd like to see it extended to 24 hours.
Members of the council, any questions or comments for Mr. Harris? Councilmember Williams.
Me and Mr. Harris graduated together too, but he's a lot older than I am.
That was a long time ago.
How long have you been parking your trailer in the street? You said you've...
Since 1996.
You bought it in 1996
Yes,
and parked it out there?
Yes, sir.
And from then up till when?
Approximately 6 to 8 months ago, the first time we were told to move it, but we weren't told about the 3 hours. We were just told that was when they were reconstructing Earl's Drive, where I do park mine at my mother's house, back way behind the property line, the store. And they talked to the zoning board, and they allowed me to leave it there for 2 weeks till they got the driveway back in to where we stored out the field.
And someone came up and knocked on your door at night?
11:30, yes, sir.
11:30, and
Yes,
who was that?
It was a police officer.
And told you had to move it at
Said
that?
he had a complaint, yes, sir.
Okay. We had went into great detail a while back, Mr. Mayor, and I thought we'd straighten this out. We had some more. Mr. Harris is a young man compared to some of the other people that came in and voiced their deals. And if you come in at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't want to unload that and have to take it and park it somewhere. You know, you want to be able to go ahead and finish your night out and get up the next morning and allot enough time. And I think the council had at that time allotted 24 hours. And how it got back into the ordinance at 3 hours, I don't know, unless it was just a misunderstanding between the council and however it got transpired. But I think a while back, Mr. Harris, that we'd already put that in as 24 hours. And
That was my understanding at one time until last week.
My suggestion tonight is to put it back like it's supposed to be at 24 hours.
Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One other point that you didn't cover that we covered in pre-council is if for some reason during this time period you have received a citation, for
No.
this?
No, I have not.
You have not received a citation?
Well, I don't think I did. I got a sticker on the window, but it was upside down, and when I peeled it
Okay.
off, it disintegrated, so I don't
But
know
you
what it
didn't get a
said.
citation.
I
Okay.
think it
We-
said 48 hours and get it out of here.
We were just going to tell you that if you had received a citation, that we would urge you to talk to the judge about it, because we do believe that during pre-council, we did determine that there was a mistake between what the council had wished the ordinance to read, what we thought it read, and what it actually read. So as part of the ordinance tonight, we will be correcting, when we vote on this, if it's passed, we will be correcting that to allow for a full 24-hour period that you can park it on the street.
That'll be well adequate. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this aspect of this comprehensive document or any other? Yes, if you would, give us your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Karen Pitzer, 3929 Larkspur Drive. Hello, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again tonight. My husband and I are co-owners of property that has a shared fence line with a neighbor who, if you remember me, I've been here before, talked about the 16-foot high, 320-square-foot building, which we refer to as the barn, or the Fort Worth Star-Telegram quoted as the giraffe house. I guess it's the catalyst that you have considered lowering the ordinance down to 12 feet high and 200 square feet, which I want to thank the council for doing that. But I'm here tonight to request your consideration in reviewing this even further for two reasons. One is to consider possibly lowering the size even further and the height down even further. And secondly is to consider setback requirements that other mid-cities have already adopted. First, let me address the height and the size. I realize that Haltom City is very diverse. We have residences and homes on the south side that have multiple acre lots, and we have those that have 1, 2, 3 acre lots, and then those on the north side that have neighborhoods and communities with irregular sized lots that are not very deep, houses on top of one another, and they're typically less than an acre. These homes are very much affected by the building of temporary accessory buildings of larger sizes. Their property value is a loss because of these buildings. But on the other hand, I understand the needs of those who have multiple acre lots because they need larger buildings to accommodate their own needs of maintaining their land. This is why at the P&Z committee we proposed a ratio to lot size for Haltom City. However, for various reasons, that does not seem to be feasible at this time. We were hoping that the needs that way of all of Haltom City could be accommodated. Unfortunately, we're those with those smaller lots that have suffered a property loss as a result of buildings such as this size. Even the 12-foot by 200 square feet is still considered to be a deterrent to our property value. I want to point out here are two examples of what we look at from two windows of our homes. This is the current building that I've been talking about. The black line denotes the difference in height that is now a result of the ordinance being changed. If you can notice, there's not a change in the size. The reason for that is that with a 200 square foot ordinance, anyone can still turn their building the 20 square foot side so that it looks just like you see it here. So the size really has not changed if they elect to turn the building to that angle, which is why I'm proposing the consideration in lowering the size, because it would still look like this. And for those of us, again, who have smaller lots, this is what we face. I also would like to consider the council considering lowering the height. I know that there need to be procedures possibly discussed or reviewed or investigated that possibly could help those of us who have smaller lots who are suffering property losses from this. I have a few copies of a letter from a real estate agent who has assessed our property, and I'd like to read that right now. This is from Larry Wall from Keller Williams Realty. My name is Larry Wall, a licensed real estate agent for Keller Williams Realty in Northeast Tarrant County. Prior to my real estate career, I was the community manager for Syntex Homes in Haltom City in the Fossil Beach neighborhood. It was determined by Syntex Homes and D.R. Horton Homes that due to the lot sizes in Fossil Beach, that reasonable deeds and restrictions would be necessary to maintain good standing between neighbors. These were deeds and restrictions that original and subsequent homeowners in Fossil Beach community would be asked to comply and adhere to at the time of signing closing papers at the title company. The only reason for these deeds and restrictions was to ensure uniformity and acceptable standards by all property owners. I've personally assessed the size of the building in question. My assessment is as follows. There is no doubt that the spirit in the letter of the Fossil Beach's deeds and restrictions have been violated by such a large structure. Property values will be lowered by a significant amount once word gets out that such a building can be constructed in a neighborhood with significantly smaller lot sizes than the lots in the older, more established sections of Haltom City. Economically speaking, a structure of this size could impact Jane Karen Pitzer's home by as much as 10% of the market value. Ask yourselves the question tonight. If you were a potential home buyer and you had a choice between the Pitzer's home and a like home in the neighborhood at the same price, which would you buy? Developers are asking for and getting smaller lots approved every day throughout Northeast Tarrant County. With smaller lot sizes being approved, logic follows that the size of allowable structures on these lots begin to shrink as well. My professional recommendation would be that a structure should not exceed 9 feet in height. Dimensions should not exceed 10 feet by 14 feet. These recommendations are based on the lot sizes in Fossil Beach and the available property between homes. Respectfully, Larry Wall. I'm going to point this out because we will suffer a property loss when we go to sell our home. Not only will we suffer it from that, our neighbors will suffer from that. Haltom City will suffer from that because your taxes will be affected when we go to sell our home. So these are all factors to consider. I would hope that the city could look and review and try to meet the accommodations of all of Haltom City residents, those out with the multiple acre lots that need these larger buildings, but at the same time respecting those of us who have smaller lots who are suffering because they are being built. We're suffering economically, we're suffering as neighbors as well because of the conflict that is going on from these buildings being built. I want to also point out the setback requirements that I mentioned earlier. Some of the other mid-cities have different setback requirements. One in the North Mid-Cities area requires 10 to 15 feet to be built back from the fence line or easement, depending on the size or the height of the building. I believe that our current standard is 5 feet. Is that correct, from the fence line or from the easement? I want to point out that another Northeast Mid-City requires that the standard is 8 foot high, 5 feet from the fence line, just like ours, but for every foot higher that that building is, it must be so many feet further back from the shared fence line. Another North Mid-City requires 15 feet, no matter the size or height of the building, be further back from the fence line. If that had been the case with our current existing building, because our lots are so much smaller, his building or our neighbor's building would be on the side of their house in their front yard. So I want to point out that some of these setback requirements do help the homeowners because the further back from the fence line, the less obtrusive the building appears to be. It is still a deterrent to the property value of owners in the surrounding neighborhood, but it is less obtrusive. Finally, I want to conclude by saying that in this economy, our homes and our land are our biggest assets. And I hope that the council would take a little time and effort to further review this ordinance so that you could protect the value of the homeowners in Haltom City with smaller lots by reconsidering the size and the height of the buildings, and also by looking into other setbacks that current Northeast Mid-Cities already have adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pilcher. Before you leave, members of the council, any questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Williams.
Thank you. First off, Ms. Pitcher, thanks for coming and your input that you've had on this. I know that you and Mr. Pitcher done quite a bit of footwork on this.
Could I say one thing, Ms. Williams?
Yes.
The building is currently there. We're not standing to gain anything here. That building is built. it was in compliance with the current ordinance. The reason I'm here is to protect other neighbors from experiencing the same thing that we have. So I just would like to
I went out and looked at the house right after it was built, or they had built it, and I think they just freshly moved it to another piece of the ground. And I know your next door neighbor, I can't think of her name, she bought her house, she's retired, she bought it to enjoy the sunsets, and her sunsets in her backyard about 2:30 now. And it is quite a large building, and I spoke with Mr. Plisk about it, and didn't you tell me that you have, I thought I saw a deed restriction?
Yes, we did.
On the property?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess get the attorney to elaborate on the deed restrictions. When they bought their property, there's a deed restriction saying there can't be any of these, and now we're permitting them. So can you shed some light on that for us? Why I know if we got each individual deed restriction go with each individual property, how it could be a problem. But these people up here have nice homes, have smaller lawns. Houses south of Broadway tend to be, 3/4 an acre to acre lot, and I don't. Do you know what the size of your lot is? How many tenths of an acre they call it?
I don't have that.
I'm gonna guess like it's 2/10 of an acre, if it's that much. And the building that they built behind the pictures, I admire the pictures for coming out and saying something, because they've got this behind their house and there's nothing they can do. So I'll give you one more question where you answer both of them at once. One of them is the deed restriction, and number two, if we went over 120 foot, it's going to require a permit. Could it also require a conditional use permit where the neighbors would have input?
To address your first question, we adopt in our zoning regulations that are intended to apply throughout the zoning district to protect the citizens as a whole. In addition to our regulations, and you might consider these to be kind of an overlay, individuals who buy in a subdivision do have typically restrictive covenants or deed restrictions, as we refer to them, which apply to their lots in that particular subdivision. Those are restrictions that are put on by the developer of the subdivision that are intended to provide additional protections to people who buy property in that subdivision. We are not allowed by state law as a city to enforce deed restrictions. They are considered to be private covenants or restrictions. Any property owner who buys a piece of property typically does have a right to enforce those deed restrictions, as does a homeowners association. The unfortunate thing about deed restrictions, they are effective and they can be enforced, but they entail usually having to hire a lawyer to go to court. You file a lawsuit and get a court to enforce the deed restrictions, and that costs money. But it's something that we don't have a right to enforce as a city, and our regulations may not be as strict as a particular deed restriction is, because they're intended to apply citywide and they're not specific to a certain neighborhood that might have some peculiar aspects to it. The second question was?
Conditional use permit.
Conditional use permit. If the council desired, you could require a conditional use permit for any accessory residential building, or for certain accessory residential buildings above a certain size. It would require that the applicant pay a fee and go through public hearings before the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. It would entail notices to surrounding property owners, and instead of your city staff just looking at an application to determine whether it complies with the ordinance, we would go through the process. It would take several weeks or a couple of months, and the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council could ultimately decide, based upon guidelines we put in the ordinance, whether or not that permit should be approved. I would recommend that you ought to have some minimum standards that apply to accessory buildings. Accessory buildings are pretty typical in residential neighborhoods, and there's some size, some height that would be appropriate in most circumstances, and that should be approved. And if you want to allow larger structures to get special permitting from the P&Z and council, then that might be an appropriate consideration.
I could see like a portable building or a temporary building, to house your lawn lawn equipment, stuff like this. But what the pictures have behind their house, they have half a house built, I think, with upstairs in it. And I think at some time the people are planning on possibly living in the building.
Well, I stress the word temporary here because right now it's being used for 7 years to store furniture and other things. And following that, it will be a workshop, which again, in a smaller community, and I know that the city is not in control of deeds and restrictions necessarily, but then again, that is a violation of our so-called deeds and restrictions that were signed. But anyway, I stress the word temporary because there is no intention upon this being a temporary accessory building. It is there to stay as long as this homeowner stays, and the intent is to retire there.
Mr. Paliska, at the time that y'all worked on this ordinance, did you have this information here that you give us tonight?
Yes. Yes.
Concerning Euless? How did the P&Z, how did they relate to the city of Euless with their 8-foot maximum and the as you move back farther away from the fence, you can go a foot higher? Can you tell me what the...
We did not discuss the city of
Mr.
Euless.
Paliska, if you would, please go to the microphone so our viewers especially.
We did not discuss the city of Euless at the P&Z. That information was not available at that time. We simply discussed the ratio of lot size to building size. Upon finding that with the city of Euless, which is close to that ratio that Mrs. Pitzer discussed, I did discuss it with the code department to see if there would be a problem enforcing that type of situation. And again, the calculative effect in terms of enforcement would be difficult. However, they could work with something along those lines much more than a ratio of lot size to building size.
Ms. Pitzer, would that be something that you could agree with if we went back along the lines of what Euless has used as far as the building being along the setback, and every foot that it moved away from the setback that it could go a foot higher? This would put your neighbors, there's nothing we can do about your neighbors right now short of a lawsuit, and I know that I've talked to you and you don't really want to pursue that. But this would make a person, if they're going to build a structure, the higher they go, the farther it's going to be away from your house and the closer it's going to be to their house, probably deterring them from wanting to do that.
Probably also restricting them because are there not restrictions on how far it can be from your own house and from your front yard?
You'd have to have a minimum separation of 5 feet between two structures.
Have you seen this city of Euless that we have here?
No, I've just talked to Mr.
Can she borrow
Pleska
yours,
about it.
Tracy? Why don't you take that and look at it for a moment and let the rest of the council comment and just read that over a minute.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jennings.
Question for Mr. Worthington. Mr. Worthington, we've talked about the possibility of establishing a conditional use permit for something along this line. I, for one, would not be in favor of going with the situation that Euless has, because I don't like the idea of varying setbacks and all this. You can control that with the use of a conditional use permit. And my question would be, do you feel that the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission would be receptive to a situation like that, understanding that this is going to put a larger load on that commission? I don't know what your load is at this point. I was thinking something along the lines of a 9-foot height maximum allowed by the ordinance, and anything over 9 foot would require a conditional use permit. As part of that conditional use permit, were I to come before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and let's say I wanted a 12-foot building, then as part of that, you would be able to say, if you're going to build this 12-foot, the conditional use permit will mandate that you move it X number of feet from the fence. Would that be something that would be workable with y'all?
If it were made as a conditional use permit, well, let me refer or talk a little bit about the feeling that of the different council members. We had one council member who was very receptive to her complaint and recommendation.
Are you saying council member or board member?
Board member, commission member.
I'm sorry.
We had one person who was very receptive to that. There were several who thought that the 12-foot limit was adequate, and there were several others who did not make comment. The vote was unanimous for the passage of the whole caboodle here.
Right.
The load is sort of unpredictable at this point. However, within the category of temporary buildings is detached garage. A detached garage would probably have to be 10 by 20, which gives you the 200 square feet. If you're going to have a wall high enough to get in and out of, it's going to have to probably be 7 or 8 feet high. You'd want some sort of a roof on it, pitched roof of some sort.
Right.
Only in the older sections of town, I would think, be where you'd have a detached garage. But I don't know that that they'd want to go to that expense for a conditional use permit.
Right. Do you feel that there would be, here again, you're talking possibility of people coming before the commission. What do you think the chances of, I would say it'd be probably less than 10 people in the city of Haltom City would be building an attached garage within the next year.
I would think.
So I don't think that the load would be that high. It's just, maybe something could be written into the ordinance that an accessory building not used for the storing of a vehicle would have to meet this 9-foot requirement, and that would do away with the garage. The garage would be a different type of building.
Actually, I believe on the new building codes that they've adopted, and it would need, and with our hard surface amendment, that particular would fall under the lines of a permanent accessory building.
Because it's
detached
attached
garage,
to-
because you would have to, first of all, park it on pavement or asphalt.
Yeah.
I do realize they sell buildings that you can be used for garages, but I believe then, at that time, you'd have to put it on an engineered slab. But he brings up a good point. If you're pulling in a riding lawnmower or you're pulling in some sort of equipment, you would need some sort of clearance in order to do that. And that clearance would, at least 10 feet to 12 feet, I would think would need to be considered, even on a temporary structure, in which they are used on most occasions as such.
Okay.
In
Well,
the larger areas.
I'm looking at this picture that you brought us, and 16 feet is out of the question.
Correct.
In a previous residence, I had one of these buildings in my backyard that I kept my lawnmowers and stuff in. It was raised off the ground like 6 inches, and then the height of the door was probably 7 feet. At the tallest point, that building couldn't have been 10 feet tall or taller. I'm thinking it was 9, but maybe 10 feet tall. And I'm thinking if we set a point, 9, 10 feet, whatever we decide on, and then anything above that height would require a conditional use permit, I think we can satisfy both sides of this thing. I think anyone that has the need for one taller than that could come before the Planning and Zone Commission and get what they need. And it would also give us the ability to notify neighbors within 200 feet, and we could get input from them based on that. I'm just trying to get a meeting of the minds here as to what would be better, rather than to just generate an ordinance that says 12 feet and then go on from that point. It gives you one more area for people to come in and voice their opinions on before the building is actually constructed.
I think that conditional use permit, like you're talking about, would probably discourage building a taller one than what your limit would be.
Isn't that what we're trying to do?
And that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That answers my question, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Fowler.
Mr. Mayor, this being first reading tonight, would it be wise for Mr. Pliska to come back, maybe take some of this and draft it in, or would it be better to send it back to P&Z to allow them to look at this and create something that would work?
It's at the council's pleasure. The P&Z worked with this ordinance for quite some time and voted unanimously. They were happy with it. I have to defer to the attorney whether this is a substantial amount enough change to go back to P&Z on. I get, looking at the fact that they'll be handling all these conditional use permits, I would say yes, so that they can voice their approval or disapproval. I believe building inspections department issues about 200, in and around 200 permits a year for these type of structures. So that might place a considerable load on the department or the Planning and Zoning Commission if, say, a large percentage of those are wishing larger structures.
Well, I think it would be wise to design a certain criteria that would be, say, your 8 to 12 foot limits, and with the different setback requirements or whatever the case may be. But I think it's something that I don't know that I'm prepared to come in here tonight. The rest of the document I don't have a problem with at all, but I would like to visit this and make sure that we do something that's long term, that's going to be productive for the whole community instead of just one area.
My main concern on this issue is an enforcement-friendly situation. I'm not out in the field like the inspectors are. I also know that these buildings, once they're built and get inspected, then individuals move them. Even in the case of the Pitzers, that huge structure was moved because it was too close to the fence. So you've got a guy in the field out there that has to go by and what we have proposed, evaluate an area and make sure that it is up to code. So my only concern is if we get off in these different fields, then you've got an inspector out there with a chart checking to make sure that this is meeting code. Rather, a standard setback of 5 foot or so forth is far more easier to handle and see or report if you're used to that situation. That is my only concern.
And I would recommend that you have a bare minimum standard that you must abide by, but then anything over that go for a CUP, and then that would allow staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission to regulate that for us.
Anything further, Council Member Fowler? I believe our attorney has some input at this point, and then Council Member Jennings.
Just to address some of the issues that were raised as far as this ordinance needing to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for additional input, it's my opinion from what we're discussing tonight that there would not be a legal requirement that it go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission if the council wishes to implement any of the items we've been talking about. As a matter of deference, you may want to send it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to get its input if you are considering doing a conditional use permitting process, and we might defer to Mr. Worthington on whether he thinks the commission would like to revisit that issue or whether they would be comfortable with the council's vote on that without going back to Planning and Zoning Commission. But legally, I don't think that's a substantial enough change that you need to send it back if you don't want to. I will also mention to the council that another option very similar to the conditional use permit that you could also consider is to authorize this in the form of a special exception, which would go to your Board of Adjustment. Your special exception would be added to the Board of Adjustment section, and it would specifically list the conditions under which the board could approve an accessory building that's larger than whatever maximum size you want to approve. And so that's another option if you want to consider that. But either of those mechanisms would allow the approval of buildings that exceed what you believe should be the normal size for accessory buildings in residential districts.
Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was one other question. I was wondering, could the council not take action on this document tonight as it is presented to us, and then request that the Planning and Zoning Commission review this one particular item, come back to us with a recommendation, and if we decide to change it, make an amendment to this zoning ordinance as it stands now?
Yes, that would be permissible.
Gosh, that's a good idea. When you're ready for a motion, I'm prepared to make one.
I passed him the note saying that.
Councilmember Hurley.
I was going to second his motion after you close the public hearing.
Councilmember Jennings, we're in line for a motion.
Yes, sir. I move that we approve the document as presented tonight with the stipulation that we ask the Planning and Zoning Commission to look at this one particular item and give us some criteria of what they feel would be proper at this point. And if they decide to give us a recommendation to change it, that we revisit that particular item and make an amendment at that time.
Councilmember Hurley, did you have?
I'd like to second that motion.
Councilmember Williams?
I'd just like to ask Mr. and Mrs. Pitzer, is this in line with what y'all were, the goal that what y'all were going for?
In answer to your question, yes. I realize that there are needs of all of Haltom City's residents, but I would also feel that the particular needs of those of us with these smaller lots have to be addressed, because as development proceeds further, lots are going to even be subdivided even more. And as reflected in the real estate's letter to the council, it also is going to happen where lots are even smaller and smaller and smaller. And thus, I think it really needs to come to the plate where the accessory buildings that have been discussed are considered for revisions that basically adhere to this smaller lot sizes. So yes, I agree. I am just here to represent all of those with neighborhoods and smaller lots to get these accessory buildings lowered in height and size.
Just a simple example to show that this board is here to execute what the citizens want and their wishes. Now, I thank you for coming out, Mr. and Ms. Pitzer, and I'm sorry to keep your children up so late.
Before I asked for a motion a while ago, I did not close the public hearing. Mr. Counselor, do we need to have that motion? How do we need to address that?
I would recommend that you call once again to see if there's any other input on the ordinance before you do, but if there is not, then you can close the public hearing and go straight to a vote.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on any aspect of this proposed ordinance? Okay, there being none, I close the public hearing, and Councilmember Jennings, your motion stands as...
Yes, it does stand as stated.
And your second stands?
And my second stands.
Any further discussion on the motion? There being none, if you will register your vote, and that passes unanimously. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a pinched nerve in my back, and I need to get up and stretch a little bit, but we have a couple of other items with the permission of the council. I'd like to go ahead with the Visitor Citizens Forum. We have two individuals who've requested to speak, and then I think Councilmember Fowler has an announcement to make, and then we'll take a stretch break. Our first person who wishes to address the council tonight is Edrina Jennings Smith. Ms. Smith, would you come forward at this time and give us your name and your address for the record, please?
My name is Edrina Jennings Smith. I live at 3024 Jean Lane. Mr. Mayor, have you got that alarm clock running?
No, I don't, but I did make a note of time, and if I might, before you start, let me just tell them what
Are you taking my time?
Oh, no.
All right.
No, I learned better last time not to do that. She asked me last week, or she told me, she said, Mr. Mayor, you are a very brave man. And I said, oh? And she said, you're the only man that ever told me my time to speak was up and lived to tell about it.
That's right.
So, with that in mind, the clock hadn't started ticking yet.
Well, when I get to a minute, could you just wave? Because that
I'll do
alarm makes me nervous.
I'll do it. Please go ahead, Ms. Smith.
I'm looking at a great group of fellas tonight. I'm here to thank you for a job well done. Now, I looked during some of this other stuff that was going on. It was over my head, but that's okay. And I looked up here and I thought, my goodness, they look like a bunch of undertakers at some convention. But you get the job done. Don't frown at me.
Sorry, Mother.
I want to thank you for the hours you spend to make our city what it is. I want to thank you for however many hours you spend Saturday trying to stretch our dollars. I want to thank your wives and your children for sharing you with us citizens. I want to thank you for the job you're doing and for the dignity with which you're holding your office. That's what you were put here for. Now, there are some people who do not agree with me, but that's okay. Oh, we have some hot stuff in the printed pages. I don't know whether y'all have noticed it or not, but it is wonderful. 2 or 3 times the same name appears, and it reminds me of when my granddaughter was little. Something would happen in the family, she would go ballistic. All right, then I'll just go tell my b-ball. Well, there's some of our citizens, when y'all make a decision they don't like, it's all right, then I'll just go write the Star-Telegram. They're entitled to be wrong if they want to be. They don't have to agree with y'all. And there's a couple of you fellas up here that some people don't like. That's all right. I like you. That makes it even. Now then, don't sling mud. Leave that to us old folks because we don't have enough to do anyway. Accept the criticism with dignity. Now then, when I get to the point where everything Brother Mayor does is against my grain, and I like no decision he makes, I will not go to the printed page. I will meet the man up here when election time comes and throw my hat or coat or whatever you're supposed to throw into the ring if you think you can do a better job than who's doing it. Now that, fellas, is a sobering thought to have me as your mayor. Nonetheless, keep the good work up. Thank you for leading us, and thank you for loving us. Good night.
Thank you very much, and I dropped her a card the other day after she told me that I lived to tell about it after I had told her time was up when she spoke here first. And in that card I said, "You're my kind of lady. I like that straightforward, up front, no punches pulled, you know where you stand." And so thank you for addressing us tonight. Our second speaker is Catherine Griffith. Ms. Griffith, if you would come forward and give us your name and address for the record. I think you want to speak on clear and vegetate the drainage ditch.
Yes, sir. My name is Catherine Griffith. I live at 3324 Tommy Watkins Drive in Haltom City. And tonight I'm addressing the Haltom City Council because I have exhausted my options as well as my patience with Alamo Homes and the developer from whom I purchased my home on Tommy Watkins Drive. The developer in question is North Texas Land Development. In April of 2000, I signed a contract to buy my house from Alamo Homes. And at that time, I expressed my concerns about the drainage ditch behind my house. I was assured then by Alamo Homes that the developer had plans to repair and vegetate the ditch as soon as the houses were built. The houses are built now and have been built for 2 years. In fact, I have lived in my home on Tommy Watkins for 2 years and 2 months. The weeds behind my new home have been taller than my backyard fence until last Friday. And I have made numerous calls this month. I've spoke with the city engineer, and anyway, they have been taller than my fence. And when I opened my gate, the weeds totally blocked egress from my backyard, and nothing had been done. And until that time, North Texas Land Development had not turned a hand to live up to its commitment to repair and vegetate the ditch behind my house. And after numerous phone calls to the city engineers this month, last Friday, someone came from the city and came out and made a big mess. They knocked the weeds down, and now they are just piled back there, and some of them are not even cut loose from the ground. They are just kind of pushed down. And I hope that the North Texas Land Development doesn't believe that it has solved the problem. As I said, I expressed my concern about the drainage ditch behind my home in April of 2000 before I bought my house from Alamo Home. By June of 2001, nothing had been done. After numerous phone calls, I received a letter from interim city manager Patrick Elfink, who was very kind to me and very patient with me. and he assured me that North Texas Land Development had been advised to take care of the drainage ditch behind my home. In one of our conversations, Mr. Elfink advised me that North Texas Land Development had put up a deposit of several $1,000s to ensure that the work was done. That is, if the development company did not live up to its obligation to repair and vegetate the drainage ditch behind my home, the city of Haltom City had the funds available to do his job for him. After making this mess behind my house on Friday, I am requesting a full accounting of these funds in order to determine if these funds were used to make this mess behind my home or if my tax dollars were used. In August of 2001, I received a memorandum from the city of Haltom City giving updates on events starting in March of 2001 through August of 2001, copies of which I am prepared to distribute. I better not say that one. My fellow residents of Tommy Watkins Drive and I believe that the North Texas Land Development, we believed that they would honor their commitment to us. But apparently, North Texas Land Development has established that it has no intention of taking care of its business obligations. Instead, I suppose that they have allowed their obligations to fall to the city. If the city is now obligated...
You have one moment.
Okay, I'm almost through.
Wrap up, please.
If the city is now obligated, the funds are there. Not only is this bad business and bad politics, but it's a health hazard. There is a growing hazard behind my home in the form of a breeding ground for mosquitoes. And this is at a time when all of North Texas, as well as the entire state, is fighting to mitigate the spread of the West Nile virus. As I've said, I've run out of options, so now I have come before the city council to see if something can be done about the weeds, and it's supposed to be cleared and vegetated. And we agreed, the homeowners agreed, we would help take care of it once it's done. But is there a time limit for the North Texas Land Development to live up to its obligations to clear and vegetate this drainage ditch? And I'm not talking about just simply coming over for 2 years and knocking down the weeds. Is there a time limit for the funds that the city is holding to be expended for the city to live up to its obligations? And as homeowners, what would you suggest that we do? And if this was your home, what would you do? Thank you.
Ms. Griffin, because this item was not posted on the agenda, and I should have mentioned that when we led into this segment of our meeting, whatever issues you raise, because we have not had this posted by law 72 hours ahead of time, we cannot comment back to you tonight.
All right.
We cannot debate this issue. We cannot discuss it. The city manager has taken notice of the issues you have raised. Do you have any comment?
Just a brief comment, if I could. I haven't been back there in well over a month, so I'm not even sure of the current status. But I do believe that North Texas Land Development Company is through, and I believe it is the responsibility of the city now to maintain the ditch, and that means cutting the weeds. And I believe, I really believe that all of it had been vegetated, but maybe there's something that I've missed last time I was out there. But I'll drive out there tomorrow afternoon myself, take a look at it, and then I'll follow up to you.
And that's as far as we can comment.
Can I pass these out?
Sure. That's as far as we can comment tonight, Ms. Griffin, because it was not a posted item on the agenda.
Well, I didn't understand that, and I've called and talked to the city secretary and asked, what I had to do, but she just said come early and sign up, and that's what I've done.
Let's let the city manager follow up in the way he had just indicated, and then we can go from there. You have options at future council meetings to do some other things, but let's follow up the way the city manager had suggested a moment ago. Take that step and see where it takes us. If you'll hand that to Councilmember Jennings. Thank you very much, Ms. Griffin.
Can I get your phone number? Or some way to contact you tomorrow?
It's 817-834-3240.
Thank you very much. These are the only two speakers' request cards that have been filled out. We come now to the announcement and events section. Councilmember Fowler, I believe you have an announcement you wish to make.
Yes, sir, Mr. Merrick, thank you. I'd like to let everyone know that our Haltom High School football team will be starting their season this Friday night. I believe it's a Fine Arts and Academics Center. Yes, we have to play those Richland Rebels the very first game, so I know the bus would like everyone to come out and support them, and I think it'd be great for our community. The students in our student body of Haltom High School does a lot for the city and does a great deal of involvement with the community and with the council. And I know that they would like your support, and hope everyone can take time to get out there Friday night.
Other announcements or events, members of the council? There being none, the time is 5 minutes after 9. Let's be back in prepared to reconvene at 9:15.
No problem.
Stand.
Sure, not a problem. Yeah.
Hi, Bob.
If I can do anything, let me know.
Who we missing, John? And
There's John. We need the city manager.
Richard Torres.
John Ray.
Man, get this over.
Vehicles for hire of the Haltom City Code of Ordinances by adding Article 3 Vehicle Record Services. Gentlemen, what is your pleasure regarding this item? Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd requested to have this put on there in the for a particular item on this, and the Police Chief Billy Hammond has been in the process of rewriting this ordinance, and I think at this time the council's not ready to pass the ordinance as written. I think we're wanting to get some more input from the council and make sure that we're all on the same page with each other. So, if all due respect, I'd like to table the item till a later date.
Okay, is that in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Councilmember Fowler.
I'd like to second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Hurley.
That was for a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to table this until later. Any discussion on the motion? You'll register your vote, and that passes by unanimous vote. That causes us now to move to item number 9, financial report for July 2002. Mr. Elfrink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. We do have here our monthly report for the financial activity ending the month of July 31st. However, I don't need to point out to the Council that we gave you a rather full-length review of our financial status and what our expectations are for the end of this fiscal year on Friday evening, and we continue to discuss many of those issues on Saturday. There's nothing really that's changed from that presentation, and basically I'll just entertain any questions that the council may have at this time, if any, on this information.
Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Elfrink on the financial report for July 2002? Councilmember Williams?
I don't have any questions right now, but I just want to compliment you and your staff on the work that y'all done on this, and that y'all continually do on a year on.
Thank you,
especially
Council.
you and all your staff, the input that y'all had on the budget.
I would like to mention that a couple of weeks ago, when we were trying very hard to finish up the budget, which is an over 400-page document, I told my staff, I said, this report could be late this month, and I don't say that very often. And I was very much impressed that the staff still had it ready on time and for submission to the council. I was very impressed.
I was impressed that your staff was interested all the way through the budget session for 2 hours.
They thoroughly enjoyed that.
They told me they did.
They
come back and said
really
they had a
did.
good time.
They really did. It was a good experience for them.
Thank you and all the staff and all the city departments, and even the chief of police is wanting to be thanked back. Thank you, Billy.
He deserves a big thanks.
Any
Yes.
any further questions
Thank
or
you.
comments on the financial report? I'm in line for a motion, if we can, to accept this financial report. Councilmember Jennings?
Move to approve.
Councilmember Henderson?
That's for a second.
Councilmember Hurley?
That was for a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? That passes by unanimous vote. That brings us now to item 10, be presented by Tom Muir. Capital Improvement Status Report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Fortunately, my report's going to be a little bit longer than Mr. Elfrink's. We'll start with the big two, Carson and Broadway. Carson, contractor's very close to stabilizing this upgrade, which is lime. They're going to be starting that sometime this week. If they haven't started it already, they'll be doing it this week. But that'll take a couple of weeks, then they'll be adding the asphalt on top of that. For Broadway, the contractor, JL Steel, is still performing the water and sanitary sewer infrastructure portion of the contract that will be going on for some time. That's still progressing. As far as the street reconstruction projects, the Lindsay, Revere, and Roxy project, Roxy has already started their utility replacement. Lindsay and Revere will follow. I do have one slight change in the report that you have in front of you. State that the bids for the street portion of that work are going to be bid out in October. That has since been revised recently. The staff has decided to go ahead and do that themselves. The utility replacement's going very well. We thought it would be better service to the citizens of those streets if we went ahead and got a head start on that ourselves. So the staff will be doing that. As far as for the Jerry and Mona
The utility replacement portion of the contract is almost finished. There's just a small portion of sanitary sewer left. The rest of the project will be complete probably by the end of this year or early 2003. It was originally scheduled to be complete in summer, but it's moving very, very well. For Catalpa, that is a CDBG project. TXU Gas is still trying to do their line relocation portion. They ran into a little bit of difficulty, but they have passed that, and it should be complete within the next couple of weeks. The contractor for the street portion is Marpave Construction. That's been acquired through Tarrant County, who's administering the CDBG block grant for the city. On this fiscal year's milling and overlay projects, the milling has been complete on all the streets that were scheduled. The overlay started last week, and that should be complete by mid-September. The North Beach 820 frontage road. We had a groundbreaking some time ago, a month or so ago, and if you go out there now, there's not much progress on it. Mainly because we ran into a little bit of a difficulty. Citgo's got a gas line that goes along the same place where the frontage road's going to be. Citgo's willing to move the line, and the city has gone ahead and given its approval to allow that. But to also move it, Fort Worth has to give their approval for moving it, and getting Fort Worth's approval has been a little lengthy, long in getting that. And seeing as how there's been a problem with that, Citgo's offered to go ahead and allow the road to go over their line, provided that their inspector is on the site the entire time of the job to preserve the integrity of their line. But to do that, they want us to fund their inspector to be out there, and TxDOT's considering that option. This is a TxDOT project, and if it's going to be funded, TxDOT would have to make that decision. So they're deciding whether to do that, while Fort Worth's kind of waiting. We're kind of waiting to see what Fort Worth's going to do, so we're kind of seeing which way it's going to go. But the timeline for the project is still intact. We still think it'll be complete in a couple of months, but that has been the delay. That's why you haven't seen any activity going on. The Midway Road Bridge, press release went out a week or two ago. That project will start really getting into high gear next week with the road closings. And they'll be closed for about 6 months. The project, the bridge will open back up, and the project should be complete by early next summer. Big Fossil Creek channel improvements. That's the channel just north of Haltom High. Last month we explained that the staff, the engineer, and the contractor were trying to work a solution to a drainage flume issue, and we believe we've done that. One flume was replaced. 2 others had curbs added to them. Hydromulch was laid down last week, and if you drive out there now, there's piping along the channel, and they're watering furiously, trying to establish the grass. So we'll see how that goes. In the sanitary sewer sections, the manhole rehab, Infra Rehab Inc. is the contractor for this portion of for the manhole rehab. They've we feel that they have been doing some substandard work, and as such, the bonding company has stepped in to provide some assistance in that area. We're still, between the three of us, we're all still working at trying to get the project completed, and we still feel it'll be done in a timely fashion, but it's we have hit a little bit of a glitch there. On the sanitary sewer replacement on the Big Fossil Creek drainage basin, that contract was just awarded either last council meeting or council meeting before. I think it was last council meeting for about $2.7 million. Contract documents are being executed now. They still have some permitting to get through with the Texas Water Development Board, but that project should start early next week. Not next week, next month. In our building projects, we saw a fine presentation on the animal shelter, and the Animal Control Board, where they profiled the animal shelter. That project is still, while it's substantially complete, is not final yet. We've run into some issues with the contractor. We'll be going to a mediation hearing middle of next month, and if failing any resolution out of that, we'll go to arbitration, and arbitration will be the final decision on that. but there were some issues with the construction of the project that we are still unresolved. And finally, I'll close with the library project. A architect selection committee has been formed, which consists of 2 library board members and 3 staff members, the library director, the city engineer, and myself. And we have had 1 meeting. We've got another meeting tomorrow afternoon to go over criteria and drafting of an RFP to solicit an architect. We'll probably issue those things in late this year to qualified architects with the hopes of hiring an architect early 2003. With that completes the highlights of the report. If there's anything else in there.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Muir? Mr. Torres, any comments you'd like to make?
No, I might add, I believe these are being posted on the website.
Yes, they are posted out there now.
For the benefit of the citizens who might at any given time want to check on the status of a particular project.
Yeah, this is out there, and also Mr. Elfrank's comprehensive financial report is out there on the internet also, on our website.
Okay. Councilmember Williams.
Mr. Muir, I want to thank you for your report there. I do have a question about Midway Road, and I see the Chief of Police and the Fire Chief both sitting back there. I know that y'all done quite a bit educating the public on going to close that road, and I think it's probably going to be until...
For 6 months, till early March.
Early March. As far as the fire trucks and emergency vehicles, I know that they will know the routes around there. Are we going to have any signage?
Yes.
As far as there's a lot of truck traffic on Midway. I'm not so concerned about those leaving Belknap trying to go toward the bridge because they'll just end up in the shopping center down there, but coming back westbound on Midway. If those truck traffic comes through there, that's going to cause 2 problems. One's a hard turn in Harrow Street, and plus putting truck traffic on that street that doesn't need it on. Have y'all made provisions for that?
We believe we've provided for adequate signage, but we'll certainly revisit it this week and make sure that it's done correctly when it's put out Sunday night.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further, members of the council? I think it is important that we keep our citizens posted on this through these types of reports as well as on the website. We have more going in Haltom City than we've probably had at any one point in time, and we're about to shift into high gear. And I think there's nothing quite like providing information through every resource available to our citizens on what is happening on the various projects. And we appreciate your leadership in this area, Mr. Muir.
You're welcome.
We don't need a motion regarding that item. Members of the council, moving now to item number 11, resignation of board members. Any resignations? Councilmember Hurley.
Mayor, I've got one resignation from the Minorities Board, from Diane Branson, due to personal and family time and business interest. She couldn't devote necessary time to it and preferred to resign.
Okay, you have heard Councilmember Hurley present his resignation for Ms. Branson from the Minorities and Fire Board. We need to ratify that resignation, and that ratification passes by unanimous vote. Do we have other resignations tonight? Councilmember Williams.
I don't have a resignation, Mr. Mayor, but I would like to report that I have some open spots, one on the Park Board. I have a person be appointed to that. The Volunteer Service Board, I have an opening for that. And I just got word this week that possibly my appointment to the Minority Board may be moving out of the city. And if that happens, I'll have 3 openings. And if we can get some applications in there, we'd like to have some people serving those positions.
Okay. No action to be taken on that. I do want to remind our citizens, not only here in the council chamber, but who are watching on HCTV, we do have some openings, and we are receptive to people volunteering for those positions. So keep that in mind. Join us in helping make Haltom City a better place by serving on these very important boards of volunteers that Councilmember Williams spoke of just now, are as areas of particular need. Appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions. Councilmember Jennings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to appoint Deanne Russell to the Park Board in place 1.
We have a nomination, a recommendation, if you will, vote to ratify. And that ratification is unanimous. Councilmember Hurley?
I have an appointment on the Minorities Board to replace Diane Branson. I have an application here from Louis A. DePorto Sr., who lives at 4908 Fossil Drive. I have not had a chance to contact him, but since his application was on file, I'll go ahead and appoint him, and he can receive correspondence from our city secretary.
Okay, you have heard Councilmember Hurley's appointment of Mr. DePorto to the Minority Affairs Board. Need ratification of that, and that passes by unanimous vote. Item number 13 is a moot issue because everyone is present tonight. We will move at this time into executive session pursuant to section 551.071, .072, and .074, and we'll reconvene in open session to take any action as a result of executive session. The time is 9:36.